Previously, on Beneath the Spotlight.
The officers shone their flashlights into the car, and for a moment, Marcus thought it was all over. But then, one of the officers' faces lit up with recognition. "Hey, isn't that?" the officer started to say, his voice trailing off as he stared at Marcus in awe. The other officer leaned in, a huge grin spreading across his face. "It's Marcus, the famous singer," he exclaimed. The officers started hyping and shouting Marcus's name, completely oblivious to the fact that they had a dead body hidden in the trunk. Marcus, still shaken, managed to muster up a weak smile and wave at the officers. Alex, sensing an opportunity, leaned over and whispered something to Marcus. Marcus nodded, and then reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash. "Hey, officers," Marcus said, his voice smooth as silk. "Thanks for being such big fans. Why don't you take this and, buy yourselves a drink on me?" The officers' eyes lit up at the sight of the cash, and they eagerly took it from Marcus. "Thanks, Marcus. We won't bother you anymore," one of them said, winking. As they drove away from the checkpoint, Marcus let out a sigh of relief. "That was close," he whispered to Alex. Alex nodded, his eyes still fixed on the road ahead. "We're not out of the woods yet, Marcus. We still have to get rid of the body." Under the cover of darkness, Alex and Marcus made their way to the forest. They had wrapped Sarah's body in a thick blanket, and Alex had brought a shovel to dig a grave. As they walked deeper into the forest, the only sound was the rustling of leaves beneath their feet. Alex had chosen a spot near a stream, where the sound of running water would help to conceal any noise they might make. Marcus was quiet, his eyes fixed on the ground as they walked. He was lost in thought, haunted by the memories of what had happened to Sarah. Alex, on the other hand, was focused on the task at hand. He had taken charge of the situation, and was determined to see it through to the end. As they reached a spot where Alex had chosen to dig the grave, Marcus finally spoke up. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alex nodded. "It's the best we can do under the circumstances," he replied. "We can't just leave her body out in the open. We have to make sure she's taken care of." Marcus nodded, though he still looked uncertain. Alex began to dig the grave, the sound of the shovel striking earth echoing through the forest. After he was done, they slowly pushed Sarah's body into the pit, with Marcus all feeling a sense of regret for his uncontrolled anger. After Maya's highly publicized breakup and subsequent hiatus, Maya's music career struggled to regain its former momentum. Her fans had moved on to other artists, and the music industry is notoriously fickle. Maya's team tried to revive her career with a comeback single, but it fell flat. The song's lyrics, which were meant to be a heartfelt reflection on her experiences, came across as forced and insincere. The music video, which was intended to showcase Maya's growth and newfound confidence, was instead met with criticism for its lack of originality. The video's concept, which featured Maya singing and dancing in a dark, moody landscape, was seen as a rehashing of her earlier work. Despite her best efforts, Maya's music just couldn't seem to recapture the magic of her earlier releases. Her songs, which had once been so full of life and energy, now felt stale and uninspired. The critics were brutal, with many of them writing off Maya's career as a flash in the pan. The media, which had once fawned over her, now seemed more interested in her personal life than her music. Maya's fans, who had once been so devoted, began to lose interest. They stopped attending her concerts, and her social media following began to dwindle. As the months went by, Maya's career continued to stagnate. She was dropped by her record label, and her team began to disband. It seemed as though Maya's music career was all but over. But Maya refused to give up. She knew that she still had music in her, and she was determined to find a way to share it with the world once again. Jamal walked around the mansion, wearing a blue shorts and holding a glass of wine. He posed in front of the expensive artwork, admiring his reflection in the mirror. He snapped selfies in front of the lavish furniture, captioning them "My Castle" and "Living the Dream." He paraded around the mansion, pretending to own it, and boasting about his wealth on social media. He would often invite friends and acquaintances over, giving them a tour of the mansion and pretending it was his own. He loved the admiration and envy he received from others, and he would do anything to keep up the illusion. But the truth was that Jamal didn't own the mansion. It was built by his uncle abroad, and Jamal was just living in it rent-free. His uncle had taken pity on him and allowed him to stay, but Jamal was too proud to admit the truth. But what his fans didn't know was that Jamal's extravagant lifestyle was a facade. Despite years of singing and making hits, Jamal didn't own a single house to his name. He was living in a mansion built by his uncle abroad, but he would often brag about owning it, claiming it was his own property. To maintain his image of wealth and success, Jamal would often go to nightclubs and spend millions of dollars on drinks and champagne. He would order entire bottles of expensive liquor and spray them on the crowd, just to show off his wealth. He would also tip the DJs and bartenders thousands of dollars, just to get them to shout out his name and announce his presence to the club. But the truth was that Jamal was bankrupting himself with his extravagant spending. He would often come home from the club with nothing but a handful of receipts and a massive hangover. His uncle, who had been supporting him financially, was growing tired of his reckless spending and was threatening to cut him off. Jamal woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing. He reached over to his nightstand and picked it up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He looked at the screen and saw that he had received a notification from his bank. He smiled to himself as he saw that a large sum of money had been deposited into his account. The money was from an ambassadorial deal he had secretly secured with a new product that had just been launched. Jamal had been approached by the company's representatives, who were fans of his music and wanted him to be the face of their brand. Jamal had agreed, but he had kept the deal a secret from his management team. Jamal's management team had been trying to get him to focus on his music and tour schedule, but Jamal had other plans. He had been using his fame and influence to secure lucrative endorsement deals and business partnerships. He had become a master of self-promotion, and he knew how to use his image and brand to make money. But Jamal's secret deal had the potential to upset his management team and damage his reputation. He knew that he had to keep it under wraps, at least for now. Jamal couldn't contain his excitement as he jumped out of bed and began to get ready for the day. He quickly dialed the numbers of his closest friends, inviting them over to celebrate his newfound wealth. "Yo guys, I just got paid. Let's go celebrate," Jamal exclaimed, not revealing the details of his secret deal. Jamal revealed his plan for the day. "I was thinking we could go visit my girl. She's been studying hard for her nursing exams, and I want to surprise her." Jamal bragged about his girlfriend's beauty and intelligence. "She's a genius, man. She's going to be a nurse one day, and I'm going to be her rich husband," he joked, his friends laughing along with him. Jamal's friends arrived shortly, and they all decided to roll up to the nursing school in style. But instead of going to visit Jamal's girlfriend, Jamal had a different plan in mind. "Yo, guys, let's go to the bank first," Jamal said, a mischievous glint in his eye. His friends looked at each other in confusion, but Jamal just laughed. "I want to show off my wealth to my girl. I want to withdraw all the cash and bring it to the school." His friends shrugged and went along with the plan. Jamal and one of his friends got into one luxury car, while the rest followed in another. They arrived at the bank, and Jamal proudly walked up to the counter. "I want to withdraw all my money," Jamal declared, a big smile on his face. The bank teller looked at him strangely, but Jamal just winked at her. "I'm a rich man." The teller handed Jamal a large stack of cash, and Jamal proudly held it up, grinning from ear to ear. He felt like the king of the world. But as they left the bank, Jamal's friends couldn't help but wonder if he was being reckless and irresponsible. "Yo, Jamal, are you sure you should be carrying around that much cash?" one of them asked. Jamal just laughed. "I'm a star, bro. I can do what I want." Jamal and his friends arrived at the nursing school, causing a stir among the students. The nursing students, who were mostly serious and focused on their studies, looked up in surprise as Jamal and his entourage pulled up in their luxury cars. The students couldn't help but stare as Jamal stepped out of the car, holding a large stack of cash and grinning from ear to ear. They cheered and whistled, excited by the sudden commotion. Jamal's girlfriend, who was a nursing student herself, was overjoyed to see him. She ran up to him and threw her arms around his neck, hugging him tightly. "I'm so happy to see you, baby," she exclaimed. Jamal smiled, feeling like a king. He wrapped his arms around his girlfriend and held her close, basking in the attention and admiration of the crowd. The nursing students cheered and clapped, happy to see their classmates so happy. They took pictures with Jamal and his friends, and some even asked for autographs. The school authorities were surprised to hear about Jamal's presence on campus, and they quickly sprang into action. One after the other, they came to greet him, shaking his hand and congratulating him on his supposed success. The principal, the dean, and even the school's administrators all made their way to where Jamal was standing, surrounded by his friends and his girlfriend. They were all smiles, eager to bask in the glory of Jamal's fame. But before they could even get a word in edgewise, the school's principal announced that an emergency assembly would be held in honor of Jamal's visit. The students were quickly gathered in the auditorium, and Jamal was invited to take the stage. As Jamal stepped up to the microphone, the students erupted into cheers and applause. Jamal grinned, feeling like a rock star. He began to speak, his words dripping with arrogance and self-importance. "I'm honored to be here today, guys," Jamal said, his voice booming through the auditorium. "I'm proud to be a role model for many of you, and I'm happy to share my story with you all." The students listened intently, hanging on Jamal's every word. But little did they know, Jamal's story was far from authentic. He was living a lie. At the assembly, Jamal wanted to make a big impression and show everyone how rich and successful he was. He decided to give away money to students who could answer questions about his songs. The students were excited and eager to participate, and Jamal was happy to oblige. He asked questions about his lyrics and music videos, and students who answered correctly were rewarded with cash prizes. But Jamal didn't stop there. He wanted to make an even bigger splash. So he announced that he would be building a new library for the school. The students cheered and clapped, thrilled by the prospect of a new facility. To show his commitment to the project, Jamal pulled out a huge sum of money and handed it to the headmaster as a first deposit. The headmaster was overwhelmed with gratitude, and the students cheered and whistled. Jamal smiled, feeling like a hero. He was basking in the admiration and adoration of the crowd, and he loved every minute of it. The headmaster, on the other hand, was over the moon with excitement. He was eager to start working on the new library, and he thanked Jamal profusely for his generosity. But little did anyone know, Jamal's motives were not entirely pure. He was using his wealth and influence to buy admiration and adoration, rather than genuinely helping the school or its students. His actions were a shallow attempt to boost his own ego, rather than a genuine act of kindness. After the assembly, Jamal and his friends got into their cars and left the school premises. As they drove away, one of his friends turned to him and asked, "Yo, Jamal, what's up with the library project you announced? Was that really necessary?" Jamal smiled and shrugged. "I just wanted to make a big impression, show the school that I'm a big shot." His friend raised an eyebrow. "But Jamal, you didn't even discuss it with us beforehand. Are you sure you're ready to take on a project like that?" Jamal waved his hand dismissively. "Don't worry about it, bro. I've got it covered. I'm just trying to build my brand, His friend looked unconvinced. "I don't know, man. It seems like you're just throwing money around to impress people. Is that really worth it?" Jamal laughed. "You're just jealous, bro. I'm living my best life, and I'm not apologizing for it." But his friend's words stuck with him, and Jamal couldn't shake off the feeling that he had made a mistake. He was starting to realize that his actions might have consequences, and that his fake lifestyle might not be sustainable. As they drove further away from the school, Jamal's friend continued to question him about his motives and his actions. Jamal's responses became increasingly defensive, and the conversation turned into a heated debate. Jamal's friend shook his head in disgust. "Jamal, I don't understand why you did that. You could have used that money to pay off the loan you owe me instead of giving it to the headmaster. You're not even passionate about the project, and you can't even finish it." Jamal looked taken aback by his friend's words. He hadn't thought about the loan he owed him, and he certainly hadn't considered the fact that he might not be able to finish the project. His friend continued, "You're just trying to impress people with your wealth, but you're not thinking about the consequences. You're digging yourself deeper into debt, and you're not even sure if you'll be able to finish the project." Jamal's friend looked him straight in the eye and said, "To be honest, Jamal, I don't think you're wise enough to make that offer. You're just throwing money around to impress people, but you're not thinking about the consequences." Jamal's face turned red with anger. "How dare you?" he exclaimed. "You're just feeding off my fame. using me to get ahead. You're not even a real friend. His friend smiled calmly. Actually, Jamal, I'm wiser than you think. And that's why I'm able to use your fame to sell more cars in my business. You're the one who's spending unnecessarily just to show off. Jamal's anger turned to rage. You're just jealous, he shouted. You wish you were as successful as me. The argument escalated, with both men raising their voices. Finally, Jamal's friend had had enough. Get out of my car, Jamal, he shouted. I don't need your fake friendship. Jamal was taken aback. He had never seen his friend so angry. He realized that he had been using his friend's cars, which he had borrowed without permission. The two men got out of the car, and Jamal's friend drove away, leaving Jamal standing alone on the side of the road. Jamal was furious, but he was also starting to realize that his friend had been right. He had been throwing money around, trying to impress people, but it wasn't making him truly happy.